She didn't lose interest because you stopped trying. She didn't lose interest because you became boring. She didn't lose interest because another man suddenly appeared. She lost interest because something far more subtle changed. You became too available, not careless, not distant, not disrespectful, just always there, always replying, always explaining, always emotionally present. And psychology shows why this quietly weakens attraction, even in relationships that look calm, respectful, and emotionally healthy. This isn't about blaming women. It's about understanding a psychological shift most men never notice until attraction is already gone. There is a moment many men experience, often without realizing it. The relationship feels stable. Communication feels open. Arguments feel rare. From the outside, everything looks right. But internally, something feels different. Her enthusiasm feels softer. Her curiosity feels weaker. Her attention feels conditional. She still cares. She still talks. But the spark feels muted. And the man begins asking himself a painful question. How did this happen when I was doing everything right? Psychology offers an answer that most men are never taught. To understand this pattern, we need to separate two ideas that are often confused: effort and attraction. Effort keeps a relationship functioning. Attraction keeps desire alive. And these two do not respond to the same behaviors. Most men grow up learning a simple rule. If you show up more, if you communicate clearly, if you are emotionally open, if you make her feel safe and supported, the relationship will naturally improve. And in terms of stability, this is often true. But attraction is not built on stability alone. Attraction responds to emotional structure. And when emotional structure disappears, desire fades, even when kindness increases. This leads us to the first psychological shift that happens when a man becomes too available. It's called emotional center displacement. Early in attraction, a man has his own emotional gravity. He has a routine, a direction, an internal sense of balance. He wants her, but his emotional state does not depend on her reactions. Her mood does not regulate his mood. Her responses do not regulate his confidence. Then, slowly and quietly, something changes. He starts waiting for replies, reading meaning into silence, adjusting his emotions based on her tone. Without realizing it, he hands over his emotional center. And psychology is very clear about this. Desire flows toward emotional stability, not emotional dependence. When a man's emotional state becomes reactive to a woman's behavior, something shifts in how she experiences him. Not logically, emotionally, he begins to feel predictable, and predictability weakens tension. This is where many men misunderstand what's happening. They think availability itself is the problem, so they try to become distant, cold, unresponsive. That often makes things worse, because availability is not the issue. The loss of emotional structure is. Emotional structure means this: you can care deeply without collapsing emotionally. You can be present without being psychologically dependent. You can be available without losing your inner grounding. Attraction responds to that balance. Now let's look at the second psychological shift: perceived value dynamics. In psychology, value is not about being a good person. It's about emotional positioning. What feels scarce feels valuable. What feels guaranteed feels neutral. And what feels emotionally dependent feels heavy. Early attraction naturally contains uncertainty, not manipulation, not mind games, just emotional openness without emotional certainty. She feels chosen, not relied upon. That difference matters more than most men realize. When a man becomes too available, he often communicates something unintentionally. I will be here no matter what. Not as confidence, but as emotional certainty. And certainty removes tension. This is why women often struggle to explain what changed. They say things like, "I don't know what happened. Just don't feel the same anymore. I care about you, but something's missing." Nothing dramatic occurred. No betrayal, no explosion, no obvious mistake. Just a slow flattening of emotional energy. Here's an important thing most men don't consider. Women often feel guilty when attraction fades this way. because on paper, the man is doing everything right. He is kind, consistent, emotionally open. So instead of saying, I'm losing attraction, they say, I'm confused. That confusion is genuine, but it doesn't change the psychological pattern underneath. Before we continue, let's pause for a brief reset. So far, we've learned 3 critical points. Availability is not the enemy. Loss of emotional structure is. Effort does not create desire. Emotional stability does. And attraction fades not from neglect, but from emotional certainty. In the next part, we'll explore how trying harder actually accelerates this loss of attraction, why reassurance backfires psychologically, and how emotional imbalance quietly flips relational power without either person realizing it. When a man begins to sense emotional distance, his instinct is almost always the same. He tries harder, he becomes more attentive, more expressive, more emotionally available. From his perspective, this feels logical. If I show her how much I care, she'll feel closer again. But psychology shows something counterintuitive. Desire rarely returns through increased effort. It weakens. This happens because attraction does not respond to pursuit the way reassurance does. Reassurance calms anxiety. Attraction responds to emotional balance. And when one person starts trying harder, balance quietly disappears. Here is the psychological mechanism at work. The moment a man senses her pulling away, he shifts from presence to pursuit. He watches her tone more closely. He analyzes her responses. He becomes alert to every emotional signal. Without realizing it, he moves into a reactive position. She becomes the reference point. He becomes the adjuster. And attraction does not flow toward the adjuster. This is not about dominance, it's about emotional orientation. Who is centered and who is responding? Attraction flows toward the person who feels emotionally self-contained. When a man starts trying harder, he unintentionally sends a signal. I need this connection to stabilize how I feel. That signal is rarely spoken, but it is always felt, and emotionally, it changes how he is perceived. This is where many men get trapped. They believe that clarity will fix attraction, so they explain more, why they feel the way they feel, why they care so deeply, why the relationship matters to them. They believe transparency will rebuild closeness. But attraction does not respond to explanation. It responds to emotional presence. The more a man explains himself, the more he positions himself emotionally. And the more he positions himself, the more weight he places on her response. That weight is felt, and desire does not thrive under weight. Here's another critical piece. When reassurance becomes frequent, it loses its power. At first, reassurance feels comforting, but over time, it signals instability. Not instability in character, instability in emotional self-regulation. This is why women often say things like, I feel pressured, I feel overwhelmed, I need space. What they are responding to is not affection, it's emotional weight. And this leads to an important distinction. Closeness is not created by emotional exposure alone. Closeness is created when exposure is paired with grounding. Without grounding, exposure feels needy. Many men confuse vulnerability with emotional dependence. They are not the same. Vulnerability is sharing emotion from a place of internal stability. Dependence is sharing emotion to be stabilized by someone else. Attraction responds to the first. It recoils from the second. Now let's talk about reassurance cycles. Once reassurance becomes necessary, it becomes addictive. The man feels relief when she responds warmly. Then anxiety returns when she becomes neutral again. So he reassures himself by seeking reassurance from her. And the cycle repeats. Psychologically, this is dangerous for attraction because it teaches her nervous system that she is responsible for regulating his emotional state. That responsibility feels heavy, and desire does not coexist with obligation. Here's something most men don't realize. Women often sense this shift before they can articulate it. They feel that something has changed, not behavior, energy. The man hasn't become less kind. He's become more emotionally oriented toward her, and that orientation shifts the dynamic. At this stage, men often ask, So what am I supposed to do? Care less? No. Caring less is not the solution. Centering yourself is. Centering means this. You notice her distance without panicking. You allow silence without rushing to fill it. You experience uncertainty without collapsing emotionally. You stay present without trying to regain control. This is not easy because it requires tolerating discomfort. But discomfort is not danger. And attraction often lives on the other side of discomfort. When a man stops trying to immediately fix emotional distance, something changes. The pressure lifts, the emotional field stabilizes, and polarity has space to return. This is why some women suddenly re-engage after a man stops over-communicating. Not because he manipulated the situation, but because emotional balance quietly restored itself. Another misconception needs to be addressed here. This is not about ignoring her. Silence is not the goal. Self-regulation is. You can still respond. You can still listen. You can still care. But you stop chasing emotional certainty. You stop explaining yourself into exhaustion. You stop monitoring her reactions to regulate your own emotions. This shift alone changes everything. Because now you are present without pressure, available without dependence, open without instability. Let's pause again and summarize. So far, we've seen that. Trying harder accelerates imbalance. Reassurance can weaken desire. Explanation does not restore attraction. And emotional recentering is what allows attraction to breathe again. In the next part, we'll explore polarity in depth, why emotional distinction matters, and how grounded availability feels completely different from emotional dependence, even though the behaviors may look similar on the surface. Attraction does not survive in emotional sameness. It survives in polarity. Polarity is not about dominance, power, or control. It's about emotional distinction. Two people can be close without being emotionally merged. And when that distinction disappears, desire quietly fades. In healthy attraction, both people feel connected and separate. At the same time, they share experiences, but they do not collapse into each other emotionally. Each person retains an internal world. Their emotions belong to them. Their stability comes from within. When a man becomes too available, this distinction begins to blur. He starts anticipating her needs, adjusting his emotions, aligning his internal state with hers. At first, this feels caring, but over time, it removes contrast, and attraction requires contrast. Think of polarity like an electrical charge. Two identical charges do not create movement. Difference does. When emotional difference disappears, desire loses its current. This is why many relationships feel intense at the beginning. Not because people are playing games, but because emotional independence still exists. Each person is choosing the other from a place of wholeness, not from a need to be stabilized. As availability increases without grounding, choice slowly turns into expectation. Expectation removes tension, and tension is not conflict. Tension is energy. Here's where many men get confused. They believe harmony creates attraction, but harmony creates comfort. Attraction requires aliveness, and aliveness comes from emotional presence, not emotional fusion. When a man becomes emotionally fused, he begins to mirror. Her excitement determines his excitement. Her distance determines his anxiety. Her mood determines his state. This mirroring feels supportive, but psychologically, it erases polarity. This is why women often say things like, Anna, I feel like I lost myself in the relationship, or I don't feel the spark anymore. What they are often reacting to is emotional sameness, not behavior, energy. Another important misunderstanding needs to be cleared. Polarity does not mean unpredictability. It does not mean emotional withholding. It means emotional ownership. Emotional ownership looks like this. You feel something and you hold it. You don't immediately transfer it. You don't rush to explain it away. You don't place it in her hands to be managed. This is where grounded availability differs from emotional dependence. Both may look similar on the surface. Both involve presence. Both involve communication, but the internal posture is different. In grounded availability, you are present because you choose to be. In dependence, you are present because you need to be. That difference is felt instantly. Now let's talk about emotional space. Space is not distance. Space is not absence. Space is the absence of pressure. When emotional pressure is removed, curiosity returns. And curiosity is the foundation of desire. This is why silence, when grounded, can feel attractive. Not because of mystery, but because it allows room for projection. And projection keeps desire alive. When a man fills every silence, explains every feeling, and reassures every doubt, there is nothing left to wonder about. Certainty replaces curiosity, and curiosity is essential to attraction. This does not mean withholding information. It means allowing experience to speak louder than explanation. Another key concept here is emotional leadership. Emotional leadership is not control. It is regulation. When a man can remain emotionally stable during uncertainty, he leads emotionally without saying a word. He communicates, "I can handle this." That communication is deeply attractive. When a man becomes dysregulated, he unconsciously asks, "Can you handle this for me?" That question weakens polarity. This is why many women lose attraction during moments when men seek excessive reassurance. Not because reassurance is wrong, but because it reverses emotional roles. Polarity thrives when each person is responsible for their own emotional regulation. Connection thrives when that regulation is shared voluntarily, not demanded unconsciously. Here's a subtle but powerful point. Attraction is not maintained by what you give. It's maintained by how you hold yourself while giving. Two men can say the same words. Two men can offer the same affection. One feels attractive, the other feels heavy. The difference is emotional grounding. When a man is grounded, his presence feels spacious. When he is dependent, his presence feels consuming. Now let's pause and integrate. So far we've uncovered that polarity is about emotional distinction. Sameness weakens desire. Grounded availability preserves attraction. An emotional space is created by removing pressure, not by creating distance. In the final part, we'll bring everything together. We'll look at how to return to your emotional center, how attraction often reappears naturally when balance is restored, and why the real goal is not saving attraction, but preserving your emotional integrity. The most important shift a man can make is not behavioral, it is internal. It is the return to his emotional center. Your emotional center is the place where your sense of self is regulated internally, where your mood is not dictated by someone else's reactions, where your value is not negotiated through attention, reassurance, or approval. When attraction fades, most men focus outward. What can I say? What can I do? How can I fix this? But psychology shows that the most powerful changes happen inward. Returning to your center does not mean withdrawing love. It means withdrawing emotional dependence. Love can stay. Grounding must return. This is where many men feel confused. They think centering themselves means becoming colder, less expressive, less caring. But the opposite is true. When you are centered, your care becomes cleaner. It no longer carries anxiety. It no longer asks for validation. It no longer pressures the other person to respond in a certain way. This is why grounded presence feels completely different. You are still attentive, but you are not hovering. You are still open, but you are not leaking emotional need. You are still available, but you are not emotionally collapsed. When a man returns to this posture, something interesting happens. Even if nothing else changes, the emotional field shifts. The pressure lifts. The interaction feels lighter. And attraction, if it returns on its own terms. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Attraction cannot be negotiated. It cannot be argued into existence. It cannot be forced through effort. It either responds to emotional balance or it does not. That is why chasing attraction almost always pushes it further away, because chasing signals imbalance, and attraction avoids imbalance. Another crucial insight needs to be said clearly. You do not regain attraction by performing indifference. You regain it by embodying emotional wholeness. Performing distance while feeling needy inside creates tension, not polarity. But genuine grounding creates calm strength, and calm strength is magnetic. This is why some men seem attractive without trying, not because they are better, but because they are regulated. They do not rush to be understood. They do not explain themselves compulsively. They do not panic in uncertainty. This emotional steadiness communicates something powerful. I trust myself, and that trust is felt. Now let's address the outcome. Sometimes attraction returns, sometimes it does not. And this is where the real growth happens. If attraction returns, it is because emotional balance was restored, not because you convinced someone. If it does not return, you still gain something invaluable. You regain yourself. This is why the real goal is not saving attraction, it is preserving your emotional integrity. Because when you lose that integrity, you lose far more than a relationship. Many men stay in relationships long after attraction has faded because they are afraid to let go, not of the woman, but of the identity they built around her. Returning to your center means releasing that identity. It means remembering who you were before emotional dependence set in. That version of you was not less caring, he was more whole. This is the paradox most men never hear. The moment you stop needing to be chosen, you become more choosable, not just romantically, but in life. Because emotional self-sufficiency creates confidence without arrogance, presence without pressure, strength without force. Attraction is a byproduct of this state, not the objective. So if you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this. Being emotionally available is not a flaw. Losing yourself in availability is. Attraction does not fade because you cared. It fades when care replaces emotional strength. When you return to your center, you stop chasing certainty. You stop negotiating your value. You stop explaining yourself into emotional exhaustion. And whether attraction returns or not, you walk forward grounded, whole, and intact. That is the psychology most men were never taught.